So, hi everybody. This is Dr. Bob Lieb from Rosemont Chiropractic. We're working constantly to try and do educational classes and have moments that we can teach you while you're home in quarantine, but maybe trying to do things that are more on a positive level or have a moment of positivity where you're going to do the right thing and maybe learn some new things. Today, I have with me Dr. Scott Banks from Banks Nutrition, and he is someone in a colleague position as a chiropractor for many, many years, but one of the leading doctors in teaching and educating on nutrition, probably in the whole country, as far as I'm concerned. That's my personal opinion. I highly respect him. I've known him for many years. We've lectured on similar platforms together, and he's somebody that I definitely look up to and refer patients to all the time. And he's graciously taken a break from his busy day taking care of his patients to do this recording with us. So it'll be somewhere around 10 minutes long. Hopefully, it's exciting enough to keep your attention for that long with all that's going on in the world with YouTube. But this is going to be really, really on point, important things that you need to know from a nutritional standpoint. So before I go any further, Scott, can you just give me like a general COVID-19 virus pandemic, how to protect ourselves uh, opening, if you would?
Okay. First, Bob, I want to kind of set the theme a little bit. I'm a little hesitant to do this because I'm getting bombarded with a lot of uninformed speculation that always goes on in these situations that really is misleading, and sometimes better to talk in an informed sense is better to wait a while. But the three phases tend to be speculation, and that's always going on. What's happening in the scientific community is informed speculation, meaning the people that know the most about these things starting to get some clues. And that's where we are now. The next phase, of course, is clinical evidence, where we do the studies, we prove what we have done intelligent speculation about. We're not there yet. So I'll try to do this from that knowledgeable speculation standpoint, what we really know, and I'll talk about the limitations of it. First thing I would say about it is that we have been asked to do by the epidemiology experts, which is social distancing. This is a fast, aggressive disease that can overwhelm the system. So we will get immunity down the road. Much of it, they estimate maybe 60% from people getting exposed, mild infections or no symptoms whatsoever, and developing antibodies, and they're immune. While we're waiting for possibly an immunization. So the other thing we can do besides following those guidelines very carefully, and that's number one, is look back historically. We haven't had antibacterials, antivirals, and immunization, but in the last 100 years. For example, the antivirals really didn't come into their own until the 1950s, post-World War II development. We've been here, estimates are over 4 million years, and yet we've survived this stuff repeatedly. We've done it with a well-functioning immune system. And with that appreciation in mind, you got to follow the steps we're being asked to do. But I would also think that it's very worthwhile to look at balancing your immune system. Immune system has basically three phases. It uses some attack tools to attack viruses and other microbes. Main tool it uses for that, one of the main tools is inflammation. But as you know very well, inflammation after a while becomes damaging to the host if it's not controlled. So the first phase is activate your defense. Second phase is control it. And then the third phase is turn it back off and go into healing. That's called the pro-resolving phase. Each of those phases involve systems that are dependent on certain nutrients. For example, the first phase requires adequate vitamin C, Vitamin D is very active in that phase, and the mineral zinc. So those things need to be in order. Vitamin D, you should know that yearly with a lab test called 25-OHD. The lab test says normal's 32 to 100. You are not fully optimal immune function at 32. Most researchers agree that you want to be between 50 and 80. That's nanograms per deciliter on your vitamin D. Very simple test to do. You ought to ask for it in your physical each year, and it ought to be fixed ahead of time. These things used to be highly prolific in our diet. They are not anymore. So unfortunately, to ensure that you're doing well enough at this point, most people will need some supplementation. The other phase is quieting the inflammation, and then pro-resolution can be assisted if you know where you're at with it. For example, turning up the attack or inflammatory phase you can do with phytonutrients from herbs, berberine, ginger is very good at that, sulforaphane, which is an extract from broccoli sprouts. Those things are all able to help you fight pathogens like viruses better. But then you have to balance that inflammation out, because at some point, and we've learned that with this virus particularly, the people that transition into a pneumonia and end up having a very bad outcome get what's called cytokine storm. These are the signaling chemicals the inflammatory phase of activation uses to turn the inflammation up, and it gets going so strong and so hard that it turns around and destroys the patient's lungs. So there are different herbs that help calm those things down. Curcumin, resveratrol, most people have heard of. Curcumin is a spice used heavily in the Orient. Quercetin, which is a phenolic that's in a broad variety of natural plant source foods, which we used to eat a lot of, and we don't anymore. So I think nature gives us second chance, kind of with the attitude, I know the humans are going to mess this food thing up, so I'll give them one more chance. We'll put denser amounts of these things in herbs, and at least if they'll use those, they can do well. And anybody can safely mix these. If they're available together, it will both activate the innate or the attack immune response when it's needed, but it'll also not let the inflammation get out of hand, or it'll do the best that we can in determining that. So there's really a lot you can do to strengthen your immune system and keep all hands on deck so you get your best chance.
Got it. So from our standpoint, we're not saying anything like we're trying to treat this COVID virus or we have an answer for the COVID virus. We're really just saying these are things that you can take to aid your body's own natural ability to fight against the virus. Is that right?
Yes, and that's all we've ever been able to do. But as I mentioned, humans have successfully done that for some 4 million years.
Sure, sure. And yes, we know that the food chain has changed, especially over the last 20 years or so, right? And so there are less nutrients in some of the foods that we are growing and are eating. And even if we're trying to eat healthy, we still may be lacking something somewhere. So is there, do you have any recommendations for people who are saying, hey, I have certain nutritional issues, what should I do?
Yeah, the fair answer to that can only be, what are your nutritional issues?
Okay.
And they're, there's certain ones, there's some markers of inflammation. There's a test called high sensitivity C-reactive protein. It was developed mainly to look at heart disease risk, because heart disease is intensely driven by inflammation. And that's a simple little test. Vitamin D and high sensitivity C-reactive protein, you ought to insist on your annual physical that those markers be done, because they have to be optimized or fixed ahead of time. You can't wait until you're in the fire. Those are two important ones to do it. There are different people that by different problems are in different phases of immune strength, and they need very particular attention. For example, some people are immune compromised. For example, my sister, who had a kidney transplant, is on immunosuppressive drugs. They're deliberately holding back her immune system.
Right.
She is strictly isolated, quarantined, and she's going to be much more dependent on very specialized things. Of the people who are immune compromised, though, those special circumstances are the minority of them. Most people are immune compromised because of lifestyle-driven factors. Diet is number one. We eat a diet that's very imbalanced. It puts a lot of stress on the immune system and weakens it in many people. Other things you hear about stress, if you, when PubMed, which is the National Library of Medicine, and search under stress and immune response, it'll bring up over 23,000 studies that have been done on it, and it's copiously studied and understood. And unfortunately, we live in a very stressful society, don't do enough to control stress. And unfortunately, this has upregulated a lot of stress in a lot of people. So you got to do everything you can to control that. The big one that everyone has talked about are what's called medically comorbidities, which simply means you're not a terribly healthy person as we go into this. The big ones appear to be heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, and allergy. Interestingly, if you look at those, they are all associated with dysregulation of immune function, particularly the upregulation of excessive inflammation. In other words, they may increase the risk of some people not going into this cytokine storm of so much inflammation that they begin to turn on their own lungs and destroy it. Highly related to those diseases you have going into this. We've learned that just from the seasonal flu, that unfortunately it tends to attack older people who tend, as we age, our immune system gets a little weaker. We need to work on it a little more. And we tend to have many disease comorbidities, interestingly, all related to, for the most part, lifestyle, from heart disease to diabetes to arthritis, very high association with lifestyle. So those people need special considerations. I think they need some professional guidance on the best way to balance their immune system. And fortunately, we have a lot of tools and markers from lab work and other things that we can do to kind of find out where they're at, get them on a program specific to them to help them optimize that, and then remeasure and see if we've had an appropriate impact on it.
So someone who may be watching this may have seen some of the things or heard some of the things that you said and say, well, maybe I do fall into that category. And then you would then recommend they seek a nutritional counselor like yourself, or expert, if I may, like yourself, to get the right type of evaluation to know what they need?
Generally, yes. They need to, going back to my original comment, follow the social distancing, all of that with great care, but they also would do well. People are in different phases of activation. Some have a weak immune activation. They can't defend against getting the virus in the first place, and you handle that one way. And other people, once they activate the response and get inflammation going, they can't shut the inflammation down, and they go into the complications of the disease. And we can look at markers of, are you highly inflamed before this thing starts, and then realize that that's your risk. And we would do a lot of immune therapy with herbs and nutrients governed at being able to control the amount of inflammation, make sure that they're activating adequately, but that they can control how far it goes, because that determines whether you're going to fight the infection or you're going to fight the infection and then you're going to burn down your own house doing it.
Right. So, and And I know from having patients in the past, they see something, they hear something, they run out to the store. They'll maybe come in and ask me to look at their vitamins, and they have 25 different vitamin things for different things, and some things are overlapping in them. And so it's always been my experience, it's better to have a professional guide you through the process instead of just running out and buying a bunch of vitamin C and vitamin D and just indiscriminately taking it. Is so much better to have a professional like yourself guide them through that process of making sure they're getting the right amounts in the right way and with better quality products than some of the things that they may come across in the store.
Yeah, one of my interesting things I talk to patients about, Consumer Reports did this study every 8 years or so, where they went to all of the major outlets that sell nutritional supplements and bought them, send them to independent labs, and over 80% of them didn't contain the amount of what they said was in it. And a significant percentage of them didn't even contain what they said was in it at all. So unfortunately, that's an unregulated industry, and you want some very high quality, what we call professional grade supplements that are appropriately tested and you know what's in them so you get a measurable effect.
Especially in a time like this, right?
Yes.
Scott, I want to just do a plug here for a minute because I want everybody who is listening to this to realize that, you and I were planning on doing a class in May on Alzheimer's and understanding the nutritional background and things that can help with that condition. I want to just remind everybody we're going to be doing that May 7th. We're not really sure how it's going to look right now because we are not where we stand right this minute going to have a room of 20 or 30 or even 50 people. So there may be some type of electronic communication kind of similar to what we're doing now, but I just want to put that out there to anybody. And for you, do you have any closing thoughts or comments about this or anything you think we might be facing in the future from this?
Yeah, I think and in fact, that may be the most important thing I'd like to leave people with today. This idea of comorbidity. We've known it for a long time. It's just the relationship of the degree of severity of this viral infection with those who have disease comorbidities. If they go into it with arthritis and diabetes and heart disease, high blood pressure, they have dramatically different outcomes. And what's common in many of those diseases involve this very issue we're talking about, which is they're already excessively inflamed. I like to go to PubMed, which is the search engine, research search engine of the National Library of Medicine, and just do a search when I want to see the magnitude something's been studied. And I did that this morning for cardiovascular disease and inflammation. In other words, how much work has been done on the two. There's over 94,000 studies in PubMed that talk about cardiovascular disease and inflammation. Diabetes, over 39,000 studies. So it is not new, striking, stunning information. My point is that one of the best takeaways we can have when we get through this experience with this virus, and we will get through it, is that you need to work on your lifestyle-driven comorbidities. You need to strengthen yourself up, get healthy, because we're going to face a never-ending onslaught of these things in the future. We've had many of these much more aggressive viruses, Ebola, SARS, all of that in recent times. And that is the nature of microorganisms. As we develop defenses against them, they develop ways around our defenses. So you don't get that chance once you start getting sick to change all those things. They take a good long while to change, but they are modifiable. So we need to build the fort before the next attack. We don't want to do it in the middle of the next attack.
That's so well said. So well said, Scott. And I would echo those words as I know you have with your patients long before we were in this situation, have tried to teach that not to wait till we're in a crisis to try and start to do the right thing, but let's do the right thing now, because we never know when the crisis is going to come. And this is a perfect example of that. So hopefully we get a lot of people that are really going to learn a lesson from this. I know people are quarantining, staying at home. They're not getting sunshine. They're not making their vitamin D. They're probably not exercising. I know a lot of people are too, and they're using this as something that's motivating them. And again, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I look up to you so much, to be able to, for you to take the time to do this, and we'll get this message out to the community together.
Yeah, Bob, and I appreciate you doing this for your patient population. Your heart's in a good place.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Scott, you have a great, great, great rest of your day, and keep helping the community out, and I'll do the same.
You do the same, please.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.